Hey, this is Greg Berger, and you are listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
Today on Weekend at the Movies, we discuss a change in the guard amongst the actresses in the X-Men franchise, who may be cast as the main villain in the next Star Trek film, a few trailers that caught our attention this week, and our main review of the Divergent series, Insurgent. All that and more coming up on Weekend at the Movies. That's right, it's another episode of Weekend at the Movies. I am one of your hosts, Optimus Solo, and joining me today, back from the grave, is Matt Fridley-Sent. Hello.
Hello.
And also joining us is the Movie Revolt, Dan. Hello, Dan.
Hey, how's it going?
Not too bad. And just to get things started, Dan, how has your week been?
It's going well. The weather's nice. It's kind of weird. We had 70 degrees one day and then snow the next, so I don't know what's going on. I think Mother Nature might be drunk, but, you know, spring is starting slowly but surely.
How about you, Matt?
We also had that, but, I don't know, man. Like, I started off my week, I was still, sick. I had some sort of stomach bug, and I still had it by, like, Monday, Tuesday, so everyone at work was like, you need to go to the doctor, you're gonna die. It's like, it's been like 5 days, like, stomach bugs don't last that long. So, I survived not going to the doctor for what I think is just a mild thing that started off really bad for like 2 days. So that's how my week's been.
We're glad you're feeling better and you avoided the deathbed that people were threatening you with.
Yeah.
My week's been interesting. Let's see, things that happened in the last week. I've been having an ongoing foot issue, which I found out was plantar fasciitis, which I thought only athletes got, but apparently that's not the case, and I'm not an athlete. But, so yeah, I got fitted for some custom shoe inserts where I had to, like, put my foot in, like, a box of foam.
Nice.
And it, like, molds to my foot, because apparently I have a super high arch that no other shoes really give me the necessary support, so that was part of my week. And then, like you guys were mentioning, since we talked about the weather, it usually takes me 20 minutes to get to work, and the other day it took me an hour and 20 minutes.
Wow.
So,
you could have walked there quicker.
The worst part about it was, well, there's two bad things about it. The first worst thing about it was that there was a school bus 2 cars in front of me, so I had absolutely no idea what was going on, what was causing the standstill, or when it would, like, end. The second worst part about it is I was 3 stoplights from my place of work. So I literally probably was 5 to 8 minutes walking distance from my job. And I stayed stopped on one of the main roads for probably 40 minutes, not moving. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was because when we had winter and then we had 70 degrees weather and now we had snow again and people forgot what they had previously known 2 weeks prior and how to drive in the weather, or if there was an accident. Like I said, the school bus was blocking my view. I never saw or heard sirens, so I don't know what happened, but that was a fun time at work. So hopefully that's the last time that happens for at least another year, because that was frustrating to say the least. And I was also supposed to be training somebody that day, and I was 45 minutes late to start the training, so it was an enjoyable experience for sure. So, other than that, pretty basic week. Saw a lot of movies, so we'll get into that. And we start every week by taking a quick look at the box office. And Dan, we were right, obviously, last week with our prediction. Not that that is a badge of honor or anything, because I think anybody could have predicted that. But coming in number 1 at the box office this past weekend is, of course, the Divergent series Insurgent, which, like we all have said, that's just a weird title. So it comes in first with 52 million, just over 52 million. Cinderella went from 1 to 2 with 35 million roughly. And then a humongous drop-off between the top 2 and the rest. Run All Night stayed at 5 million, beating the newcomer, The Gunman, by just a few $1,000. And then rounding up the top 5 was Kingsman: The Secret Service with just under 5 million. With the other new one I will mention, Do You Believe, because we mentioned it last week that it was coming out, actually came in 6, which is, I think, somewhat of a surprise that got that much money. But Dan, any surprises at all or thoughts on the box office from this past week?
No huge surprises. It's pretty interesting that Kingsman's still staying in the top 5, even though it's been out for 6 weeks. So I think it's just kind of chugging along. So.
Yeah, it hasn't had like this ridiculous like weekend or week or this, but it's just been steady enough that it's done pretty well at the box office. It's now at about 115 million, so I'm happy with that because I enjoyed that film and I think it deserved that much. So I'm happy with that. Matt, what about you? Any thoughts from this week at the box office?
Well, Focus is gonna make its budget back, so it's gonna stop hurting me in the PFFL. And Run All Night is going to also still keep me in the super negatives.
Yeah.
Is anyone surprised that I'm in last place? Because I'm
not. I would have been, but Jupiter Ascending made a move this last week, and it jumped from 25% rotten to 26%.
Ooh.
So it's no longer in the bottom quarter, which saved me some points. Thank you, Julianne Moore. Julianne Moore was in Seventh Son. I don't remember who I had in Jupiter Ascending that's cost me
Sean Bean,
so
maybe?
much. Yes, Sean Bean. Yeah. That was, darn it, Sean Bean.
It's okay. Hugh Jackman's killing me with Chappie, so there you go. That's
there
not
you
making its budget back. It's $30 million about and needs to make $19 more million. Don't see it happen. So.
Right, and we'll talk about it a little bit later with The Gunman, but right when I was starting to climb up the rankings, Idris Elba appeared in The Gunman, and that would take a miracle probably if it made its small budget, so I'm just going to take another hit. I did not apparently take into account the Rotten Tomatoes in the budgets when I was picking my team. I am learning lots of lessons, I guess. But looking ahead at next week, guys, with what's coming out, there's not a bunch of new releases, but there is probably the two main ones would be the animated film Home and the Will Ferrell, Kevin Hart film Get Hard, which I think, again, is a weird name for a movie title. But does either one of them have a chance of dethroning the top two, Dan?
Kevin Hart, he does bring in money, so a possibility. And, sometimes you see huge drop-off, so I think there's a shot, but I think it'll still, it's getting killed reviews, so maybe it'll come in third, and Cinderella and Divergent stay 1 and 2.
Yeah, a lot of times a film will drop about 50% in that first week. You can see that from Cinderella this last week. It dropped 48.5. And if Divergent drops 50%, that's going to put it, right in the 26, 27 million mark. So it's not unthinkable that one of those would beat that, but it would take a healthy weekend from those types of films. But like you said, sometimes animated films, when there hasn't been a whole lot yet this year, so maybe there will be an audience for Home. And like you said, Kevin Hart has some secret box office power, so you never know. Matt, what's your prediction? What's number 1 next week?
It's probably going to still be Insurgent. I don't know, man. That movie, it's not Hunger Games, but it does well.
Yeah, it's definitely not on the same level as Hunger Games, but it seems to do decently well. It's halfway to its budget after 1 week, so that's not too shabby. Getting into some of our news stories then, who wants to start it off? Matt, you took the week off. Why don't you start with your first news story for today?
All right. So I'm going to start off light with the trailer I brought in. I brought in the trailer for Maggie. It's funny because when we were here, when I was here 2 weeks ago, we talked about Liam Neeson getting out of action movies and how that might be a good idea at old age. Maggie is a drama-y movie starring Schwarzenegger. The idea is it looks like semi-post-apocalyptic. They're dealing with the zombie apocalypse, but order has still maintained. And then he's like a sheriff or other official, and his daughter gets the zombie virus. And I guess he uses pole to pull her out of quarantine and out of the hospitals, which is believable, honestly. I don't know, man. This trailer looks crazy. I don't like super intense movies like this, but I really want to see this one.
I couldn't decide while watching that trailer what genre this film is.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was like the typical, if it's a zombie movie, if it's a more of a break, like the disease type spreading where we're just trying to contain it, if it's a horror film, if it's a drama action film. I didn't really get what that was going for. But apparently, according to the trailer, Arnold Schwarzenegger is superb. So I saw that quote from somebody that I couldn't recognize. So
might have been
Dan, what was your?
Might have been a Twitter user. You never know that. I love when they throw those into the previews here and there. It's like,
right.
Yeah, it looks intriguing. I mean, it's definitely Schwarzenegger doing something different for him. He's got a killer beard, so that's always a good sign. It kind of looks like the beard Nicolas Cage had in Joe from last year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of zombie things, but like this almost doesn't even seem to follow any of the zombie norms for the most part, except that it's a post-apocalyptic thing. So it could be good. I'm looking forward to it. I knew nothing about this, and I would say just based off the premise, I wouldn't really be that into it. But the trailer looked interesting, and I am intrigued for sure. I just don't know how much I trust Schwarzenegger as a dramatic actor. That's my only question.
And if you would have given me the plot synopsis, just read me what the movie was, and then told me who starred in it, I probably would have laughed and said that seems like a silly thing. But yeah, the trailer makes it a little more intriguing than you think. And the daughter is played by Abigail Breslin, for people who know that is. So it's her and Arnie trying to ward off everyone that's trying to contain them, I guess. So I didn't see a date for that.
The release I saw said it's going to come out before his next Genesis, like a month before Genesis, roughly.
So that's fairly recent here, coming up. So
yeah, it went to some film festivals according to the intro, so.
Which also seems weird to me.
Yeah.
Well, they have genre film festivals too, though. It could have gone to one of those. So
true. So we'll have to see as we get more on Maggie, and that should be coming up real soon. So we'll have to see if it pays off with that trailer. My first one, we almost all went with a trailer. I was real tempted to do a trailer as well, but I'm going to leave that off. So I'm going to be talking about a news story in which we have gotten our first rumors about a villain in Star Trek 3, and it's not just because he's on my PFFL team. And I'm hoping for some extra casting points. But the name being thrown around is that Idris Elba could be playing the villain in the next Star Trek film, and then specifically going into that a lot of people are speculating that it could be some type of Klingon. Matt, what do you feel about Star Trek 3 villain being a Klingon, and if so, being played by Idris Elba? I'll give you my thoughts right after that.
Well, I don't know if I've seen Idris Elba play a villain. Like, maybe nebulous characters. I don't know. I'm not the best at citing these guys. But I had, like, my biggest problem was not fucking Triple Blood or whatever in Star Trek 2, whatever the whiny internet people say. My big problem was the Klingons having head ridges. They're not supposed to have head ridges in that period in history. That was a big thing that became a weird thing in the 60s. And it's upsetting to me that they had them, especially when they had masks that gave them fake head ridges, which could have been a total honor thing. Hey, we're part of the disease. It doesn't have the head ridges, so we're wearing these fake ones to try to regain our honor in combat, whatever. They could have done that. They didn't. They really dropped the ball. So I'm upset at that, but I think, he's got a deep voice. He could be a badass Klingon.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that, and the other thing it makes me think of is back in the original Star Trek, the different famous people that ended up playing Klingons. Even if you're looking at the movies, the guy from, why is my mind going blank? From Back to the Future, the Doc.
Christopher Lloyd.
Christopher Lloyd.
Yes,
I win.
Christopher Lloyd.
I'm the movieist.
Thank you. But Christopher Lloyd played a Klingon in one of the original Star Trek films.
Really?
And yeah, and there's also, if you kind of go back through both the original Star Trek and Star Trek: The Next Generation, there's a lot of people that, if you're into the world of acting or movies or even voice acting, there's a lot of people that played Klingons that have some name recognition that you would never know. So I'm kind of intrigued at the idea of someone, pretty famous being, made up to be a Klingon, and to a point where he's probably going to be maybe not unrecognizable, but obviously he's not going to look like people are expecting or used to. So I'm kind of intrigued by that. I think it would be a cool look, and he does have kind of the the presence and the stature and the voice to kind of fit that, I think. So I'm all for that, and more so I'm all for Klingons being part of the storyline. I always enjoyed Klingon stories, so just from a Star Trek fan point, I enjoy the idea of that being a possibility that would be the direction they go. Dan, any thoughts about him being involved in Star Trek?
Yeah, I'm for it. I have seen him play some villain types, like in The Wire, he played Stringer Bell, which was, I guess, not necessarily a villain, but I know he's pretty menacing in Luther, though he's supposed to be a good guy, and he had that other movie last year where he was like the house invasion film that I don't think I saw. I forget the name of it, but it looked kind of dumb.
Oh yeah, I didn't see that either.
But yeah, I'm always Idris Elba in anything I'm into. I don't know nearly much about Star Trek as you guys do. I know who the Klingons are, and I just watch the movies, but it makes sense. And though I personally think instead of Idris Elba, it should probably be Fassbender or whoever else I have on my team, maybe Hugh Jackman. But that's maybe a personal bias.
They should just keep casting Benedict Cumberbatch as different villains.
Yeah, exactly. He can play. He'll just motion capture like everyone. So
there we go. All right, so we'll have to keep on the lookout for more rumors involving Star Trek 3 and some type of confirmation that that's actually going to be a thing, but I would be all for it. Dan, what's your first news item today?
Well, to keep with our tradition of talking about comic book movies, talking about a recent comic book movie news story that one of the most infamous or popular actresses is leaving the X-Men franchise after X-Men Apocalypse, and news that Jennifer Lawrence will be leaving after the next X-Men film to kind of go on to greener pastures or what have you. And it seems like the next one will be her last one. We do know with that one, new characters are coming in. I mean, the Jubilee is being added because I guess they need more useless characters. I don't know why they would bring Jubilee in. But
Sparklers.
Exactly. But yeah. But honestly, I'm not all that against that, because I like maybe the thing they're doing where they're doing like a trilogy per group of people, and maybe after Apocalypse I can focus on a brand new cast of people or something like that, or maybe on Young Storm and Young Cyclops or something. So I'm not all against it, and you could easily put someone else in that role. And I like Jennifer Lawrence, but I don't think her as Mystique has been something that I've really felt was a great part of those movies. She's just I don't think they've really utilized her to her full potential at this point.
Yeah, I would somewhat agree with that, and so that's why I don't think it would be, like, it's not something that's going to kill the franchise or, anything like that. I think it's something that's easily, your attention could be diverted to another character or to somebody else. I read one story that I found somewhat interesting that was obviously just internet rumor and talking out of whatever, but they were talking about the fact that it was a possibility that she would be having that as her last movie in that contract, and then that would free her up from that franchise and, the contract and the stipulations to that, and allow her then to possibly be game for a different franchise that might also be getting into the point where it's going to recycle into a new team, and talking about obviously the Avengers, and how that they would be, somewhat going away from the core group that we've seen up to this point after a few more things, and there could be a possibility for some type of future Marvel role in more on that side of things instead of with the X-Men. Do you think, Dan, that she would go right from one kind of connection to one franchise that takes a ton of her time into another one, or do you think she's more likely to go into, more critically acclaimed, award-worthy type of roles?
I don't know. She seems to like to do both because she has Hunger Games 2, and that's ending. So my guess would be they're talking about Miss Marvel, maybe, would be the only, because that's the only other one that they've really hinted towards doing. So that's my guess, is they're putting her towards that role. I don't know. I don't know she seems to like to do both, so maybe, but to me seems like a leap a little bit. I don't see it personally, her fitting that role, but she could.
What about you, Matt? What do you think about her leaving the X-Men? What does it mean for that franchise, and what would you like to see her, what direction for her to go next?
Well,
or your other thoughts on Jubilee and whoever else they're bringing in for X-Men?
Well, okay, so I'll start off with I don't know, what I feel like is obvious, is that we all had this story as one of our potential stories, which just shows that it's, like, important to us in some respect. which I thought was interesting. I really like Jennifer Lawrence and want her in the most amount of movies, and I think franchises is the way to do that. So I kind of hope she doesn't go stray away from franchises entirely. Although since I didn't watch The Hunger Games, I hope she leans towards the ones I want to see. I can't think of a Marvel character that she would be good as. Then again, if you had said Mystique before she was Mystique, I wouldn't have been jumping at that either. So I don't know. She's definitely not Ms. Marvel, Captain Marvel material.
Yeah, maybe the female
small.
Hawkeye. She has the bow experience, so you know.
True. Yeah, and that's more believable, I guess. I could see her going for DC. She could be like a decent Harley Quinn, probably. And a handful of other characters I could think. Maybe Spoiler. But not at Marvel. I don't think of anyone. Maybe Squirrel Girl, but not really. Let's see. What was the other questions?
What do you think about Jubilee or whoever else they bring in for female actresses in the X-Men franchise?
Yeah, Jubilee's... I don't know. Maybe it's because of the 90s cartoon. I always feel like Jubilee's not that useful. She might have been relevant at some point in some comic that I haven't read, but she doesn't do it for me. But that said, I kind of want them to bring in a lot of mutants without getting, off the rails on this. But, like, the more characters I get to see, the better, right? So, I don't know. Hopefully they bring in some interesting new talent to keep it going, because that was what really made First Class so good, was all the new talent. Or new to the franchise talent. I
agree with that. What's your second news story, Matt?
My second news story is about Furious 7 and how Paul Walker died.
I'm sorry.
Spoiler alert.
It's like I don't know about you guys. I had no idea because I wasn't following this franchise at all. Where they were in the making of it when he died. I know that like as far as I was concerned, I didn't hear this movie was even in production until after I had heard he was dead. So, it's all like, what are they doing? And if you look at the trailer, his house explodes and then everyone's like sad and Paul Walker's not in that scene where everyone's sad. So it's like, oh, they're just going to blow him up. Okay. But apparently that's still not good enough and they need more scenes with Paul Walker. So what they did, was they got his brother, I believe, to act out the scenes and then digitally imposed his face onto him, which is a weird thing, but also very interesting. I got mixed feelings on this. This is the same thing they do for stunt doubles and stuff nowadays. And I liked the idea of, with the older movies, if you're watching and you're paying attention, you can pick out the stunt double and pick out the stunt double's face in some scenes if the camera's not too quick or whatever. And I kind of miss that quality to movies. But it's amazing what we can do with technology nowadays.
Yeah, that's for sure. And we'll have to see how that translates and how well it looks or doesn't look. I'll have to rely on you guys to report back to me on that.
I've seen like 2 of the Fast and the Furious movies.
I will say you only need to see 5 and above.
So I don't have to see the first 4?
No, the continuity of Fast and Furious does not really matter. Let's just say a character that dies in the 3rd one is in up to the 6th one. So
oh no,
because they all take place before that, I guess. Yeah, technically maybe I hated the Fast and hate is a strong word. I didn't like the Fast and Furious movies much until the 5th one, and I liked the 5th one and 6th one. So. Because once they stopped being street race movies, I started actually liking them.
Oh, okay. So maybe I should tune into 5 and 6 and see.
Yeah, I would say.
I saw the trailer for 5, and they have like Dodge Chargers, and they pull out a bank vault out of a wall, like out of a bank with Dodge Chargers. Which my parents worked for Chrysler on an assembly line for like 35 years, and I want to be like, yeah, we could do that. We can't do that. That can't. And I saw that trailer and I was just like, this is the dumbest movie ever. And I don't know why I wasn't like, this is so dumb, I need to see this. This looks like a lot of fun. Because it looks like a lot of fun at that point.
It is. It's super ridiculous. It's like, the way I look at it is like complaining about the plot line and like reality of a Fast and the Furious movie is like going to the strip club and complaining about the choreography. It's like not what you're there for. So,
Sure.
But regarding the article, it's weird. Looking at the image that's in the article, it does look pretty good, and it's being done by Weta, who are, they're phenomenal. They're the people behind the Planet of the Apes films, and they've done a great job. So it's hard to see just in the one image. It looks really good. The only thing that I keep thinking about though is like Tron Legacy or Tron, the second Tron film with young Jeff Bridges, and how awful that ended up looking. I just hope it doesn't look like that, because if it does, it could take you out of it.
Go ahead, Matt.
I had heard that the Tron one was supposed to look bad because it was like him stuck in a computer, so it was supposed to look computery. But I haven't seen that movie, so I can't comment either way.
Yeah, and possibly.
So I guess the question should be is, will this eliminate Paul Walker's chance to win an Academy Award since they're digitally messing with?
That's a good question, and let's just say I don't think it's going to impact it one way or another.
Well, I guess this gives us a way to talk to one of the other articles I spoke of and still count this as Matt's story. Speaking of Academy Awards, has Vin Diesel lost his freaking mind, or is he just trying to be funny?
Neither.
Story from this week of Vin Diesel. Here's the quote. Universal is going to have the biggest movie in history with this movie. It will probably win Best Picture at the Oscars unless the Oscars don't want to be relevant ever. And then continue his quote. This will win Best Picture. There is nothing that will ever come close to the power of this thing. He's just joking, right?
Sounds like he's talking like I was talking about Hercules, man. This is the best ever. No one's going to ever agree with me.
I don't know if that's just a publicity stunt or if he's just talking. I don't know what that's about, but maybe the movie is eligible, but Paul Walker will not be. I don't know how that will work out.
It's gonna win all the Oscars. Let's be honest. I mean, I hope he's not serious, but I feel like sometimes Vin Diesel is. One thing Vin Diesel knows how to do is he's actually really good with publicizing himself and getting things, like he owns the Riddick franchise now because of basically appearing in one Fast and the Furious movie. So he might be smarter than we realize, but who knows?
Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see when we do our Oscar prediction show a year from now, or a little less than a year from now. My second story, I also wanted to make sure, because I saw that we didn't have any Star Wars news stories this week, so that's why I wanted to make one of mine Star Trek and the other one comic books, just so that people didn't get upset or think we had gone off the rails. So my other one is all about the future of the Avengers, and the news story obviously was about the Russo brothers officially signing on to direct both parts of Avengers Infinity War. So they are carrying on the torch from Joss Whedon, who will be apparently leaving the Marvel franchise after this next one. So the Captain America guys, who obviously most people know did The Winter Soldier, and they are about to begin on Captain America Civil War, will now be doing both of the next Avenger films. And for people that didn't know that, Civil War will lead directly into Infinity War, which is going to be broken up into 2 films, and that will be coming to cinemas in May of 2018 and May of 2019.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Infinity War films, you can look forward to that in 3 years from now and in 4 years from now. Dan, what do you think? I know you're a fan of the Captain America fan of the films. Do you think that's a good choice for them to carry on after Joss Whedon?
100%. Yeah, if Whedon's going to leave, I think it's good to stay within the family, as they say. And I love Winter Soldier, and I love the Russo Brothers episode of Community, the infamous paintball episode. So I pretty much like everything they've done. So I think it's a good choice, and I have a lot of faith that they'll keep it going. So.
What about you, Matt? Do you think I don't know how much you like the Captain America films compared to some of the other films from Marvel, but do you think it's a good idea to keep somebody that's already kind of had experience in this Marvel universe to carry on with the big Avengers titles?
Absolutely. I think once we see Civil War, we're gonna know just how good they're gonna be for this, because that should be very Avenger-y. And if not, then I don't know what Marvel's doing. But, I liked Captain America. It was the only movie I saw in theaters twice last year.
Nice.
It was Captain America 2.
Not Hercules.
No. More people were interested in seeing the Captain America, both in my circle of friends as well as worldwide. So, that's what happened there. I don't know, man. I'm gonna, the whole, Dan mentioned two things and said he's seen nearly everything they've done, so it still sounds like they're not as out there as Joss Whedon has been. So we'll see.
I think actually they did do You, Me, and Dupree, I think, too. So to be fair, I'm talking more like action movie. At least I think I could be wrong. I think they directed or wrote that. I forget, but I'm just saying there's two things they did that I really liked. I guess I should preface that.
All right. Well, Dan, what's your final news story for today?
Well, my final news story is actually about a trailer that hit, and I was going to try to avoid it, but I couldn't because it was actually played before in Insurgent when I saw it, and then I was going to watch it anyways. I'm not going to lie to myself, and that is the trailer for Mission Impossible 5 that came out, and I love Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. I thought it was a great time. It's one of to me, giving a hint to what's coming up, one of the best action films of the decade so far, in my book. But I think I was a little worried because Brad Bird was leaving, but this is looking quite good. And I gotta say, Tom Cruise is, I don't know if he's crazy or he's just really dedicated to his craft, but that dude loves hanging off of stuff. Last year it was the tallest building in the world. Now it's a plane. I don't know. I'm worried about where they're gonna do with the next movie because maybe in space. I don't know.
Satellite.
Yeah, but I don't know. I thought it looks. I'm really looking forward to Mission Impossible 5. I think it looks really good.
Yeah, I think the trailer looked pretty entertaining. I like Simon Pegg being in. I have the right person, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I like him being involved. I like the kind of the humor that he brings to it, and I'm back on. Even though Tom Cruise is absolutely batshit insane as a person, I'm back on board after last year with Live, Die, Repeat and other titles that we call that film. So I don't even know what the official title is of that film, but I'm back on board after that. So, he's believable in an action role. I love a lot of his earlier work, so I'm back on board. So I'll take a shot at this one. I need to rewatch all the other Mission Impossible films, though, because, well, maybe not all of them, but at least the last couple, just to get it back in my memory.
It's funny. It's similar to, I think, the Fast and the Furious. The first one was okay. Second one, I was a little bit too much Ang Lee, going a little bit too crazy. Third one, it got a little bit better, directed by J.J. Abrams. It's also a great performance by Philip Seymour Hoffman. And then the fourth one, it even got better. So it's weird with those two franchises that they've gotten better the longer they stayed around, which is usually the opposite. But somehow they've made it work.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to revisit those, like I said, and then get them fresh in my mind as I go in to see this one, because I want to be as excited as everybody else is. But I definitely think it looks intriguing, and the trailer made me more interested than I was prior to that. Matt, what's your opinion on the Mission Impossible franchise?
I think I need to really, really rewatch the third one, because when that came out, I don't know, I was like 12 or something. And I remember everyone talking, it's got the amazing choreographed fight scenes, and Dan had nice things to say. And all I remember is being unimpressed. And I don't know if I was just, a douchebag little kid or something, but I just remember not liking it for some reason. And it's one of the 3 or 4 films from my childhood that I'm I should have liked this, but I didn't. Along with, was it the third Jurassic Park or whatever? Ugh.
There's nothing wrong with not liking that film.
Yeah, that one was bad.
All right. So a couple other news items that we'll have linked to on our website on the episode post. A news article about a Robotech movie becoming a reality. An article about the Project Leviathan that got all kinds of people's attention, including Simon Kinberg and Neil Blomkamp. And we also have our links to our trailers, the other trailers that will be listed there. Outside of Maggie and the Mission Impossible trailer, we will also have trailers for the new Transporter film, Good Kill, Boy Choir, starring Dustin Hoffman, Dope, and the one that almost was my news story, which is the first trailer for a film called Slow West, starring Michael Fassbender. So, Dan, I know you're interested in that one.
Be good. I need you to be good.
I was really impressed by that trailer, so I'm on board still with that one, even probably more excited than before. So that also has Ben Mendelsohn and Cody Smith-McPhee in there. So you can watch all those trailers at the website and give us your thoughts on which ones you're most interested in. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to talk about what movies we've seen in the last week and give you our main attraction review of Divergent Insurgent, because that's what I'm going to call it from now on. So we'll be right back after the break.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Hi, this is Greg.
This is Chuck.
And this is Dan, and we are Talking in Circles.
Because the world needs another podcast, we are here as Geekcast Radio's newest edition.
And as the title says, each week we get lost in conversation about a wide range of topics, including movies, comics, games, art, TV, and even occasionally sports.
We play games and discuss pivotal topics like who would win in a fight, the Kool-Aid Man or Tony the Tiger, and examine the hot-button issues of the world of geekdom.
We keep things fresh by taking timeless topics in new directions.
We are simply three friends having a fun time talking about life's most fascinating foibles.
Stay connected with us every Tuesday on iTunes or at geekcastradio.com.
All right, thanks for sticking with us. And as we said, we're going to start off talking about what films we've seen in the last week. So, Dan, I'll let you go first. What's a film you saw this last week that you'd like to bring up?
Well, I'll start first with a 2015 film that I saw called Buzzard. I don't know if you guys heard about this.
I've read the description of it, and I watched a trailer on it when I was going through the on-demand menu to try to see what I wanted to watch. And I was very confused by that trailer.
I could see that because it almost feels in the vein of something like Clerks in a way, where there's not much plot by any means. It's really just this character Marty that is kind of aloof. He doesn't really fit in our society at all. He's kind of him going through life in a lot of ways. It's no real through narrative, but it's actually I ended up liking it quite a bit. And he's just a guy that finds every type of loophole, and he's in a lot of ways kind of a despicable person. But what I liked about it, how is they don't try to make him sympathetic or anything like that. He's just kind of interesting in the ways he is able to get through life in very immoral means, and like how his attempts to make money become more and more dangerous as the movie goes on. And there's just some funny scenes in a lot of ways. Like I said, it's like Clerks in the vein of in the way that like these characters are kind of like losers. He is a temp currently, and he at one time has to start living in his friend's basement. That's not even his friend's house; it's his dad's house, and they spend a lot of time like playing a game that involves them like eating bugles off the bottom of a treadmill, seeing how many they can stick in their mouth. And there's all these like little scenes that are just kind of put together. So it really fits my sensibilities, because I tend to like movies like that are really not interested in a huge narrative. They're just kind of letting you focus on these characters, character study, as they say. But it's also very clearly an independent film. Like, you could have told me this movie was made like 1984, and I would believe you, just because it has a very economical look to it. I would say, they're clearly on like a shoestring budget, but I ended up liking it. It's not amazing. I don't know, Kevin, if you would like it a great deal, just because it can linger on a lot of scenes, and there's not really, I would say, much to it in a lot of ways, but I don't know. I just like the characters. I just like the different stories, and I've ended up enjoying it a lot. But
This one, I'll tell you what almost got me to click on it, and what did get me to click on it to watch the trailer. The description on demand, I'm going to read it for you. But it went like this. When his latest ruse goes awry, mounting paranoia forces him from his lousy small-town temp job to the desolate streets of Detroit with nothing more than a pocket full of bogus checks, a dangerously altered Nintendo Power Glove, and a bad temper.
Yes, it's funny because like I say, like it's a movie out of time because it's they have like current day movie posters, but they're playing Nintendo. And their clothes almost look like out of like a 90s like skateboarder in some ways. And he does have a cool power glove which he makes into like Freddy Krueger fingers. So it's it's really, I don't know, it's odd, but I don't know, it's my type of odd. So it's probably not for everyone, but I think it'll be one of those movies that really gains an audience in years to come.
Gotcha. It has a 69% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes and an 88% as far as the critics go. What's on our scale? What kind of score would you give Buzzard?
I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. So, like I said,
okay.
Not amazing. It's probably one of the better things I've seen this year, but I've also seen like 8 movies, so not really much to go off of.
All right. I will go ahead and go next then with a film that I saw this last week, just to continue the routine here that I started last week. Last week I saw Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. So this week, obviously, I saw Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Again, it's I kind of am picking up a little bit of what you were saying last week, Dan, where, obviously Chris Columbus is the director of these two films, and it kind of has a different feel because you're dealing with the actors at a much younger age than what we get later on in the series. And it does come across as maybe, I'll have to see as I watch the more films if I see more of a transition. But I can see what you're kind of saying there with the kid-friendliness of these two films. Honestly, though, when I look at Chamber of Secrets, and something I mentioned last week was that I've only seen all these films once. This is my second time seeing each one of these films, and I saw them each the original time, I believe, either when they were in theater or very shortly afterwards. So, I did have time pass in between them, and it was something that was hard for me to kind of decipher which one was which. And in watching Chamber of Secrets, it seems like most of the memories I have of watching these films for the first time all happened in this film. So I don't know why that is, but I just kind of got that feeling that most of the big moments that I remember all came apparently from this film. And I enjoyed it on a second watch. I enjoy kind of the different things they're setting up here. I enjoy getting some backstory from a bunch of different characters. We see backstory for Voldemort. We see backstory for Hagrid. And even Dumbledore a little bit. And like I said, I do like the actor that's playing Dumbledore in these two films. So I thoroughly enjoyed it a second time around, too. I have nothing bad to say of this one. There was no moments, like I said, with the last film where it kind of caught me off guard or where I didn't quite buy into. So I really didn't have too many negatives to come away with this one. I'd probably give this one a 4 out of 5. Which I guess would translate 8 out of 10 for those at like 10 scales. But yeah, I was sitting at 4 out of 5. I don't know, Dan, what your opinion of this one was versus the first one, or if you remember them all.
I think I enjoyed it more than the first one, but it's been such a long time since I've seen it.
Right.
That's one with the snake, right?
That's one where he starts kind of talking to the snake, and then it's the one where they discover the character of Tom Riddle through the diary.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, like you said, some of them run together. I think, I like that. I like that one too, but I think it was an improvement for me, but I still think I preferred the later ones more.
Okay. Matt, what about you? What's a film you saw this week?
One thing I wanted to for your continuing Harry Potter watching, let me know if, like I remember, the third one is chopped up to the point where a lot of things happen out of order and it doesn't make sense. Like, I don't think you've read the books, right?
No, but Amanda has, so I'll be watching them with her, so I can kind of ask her some questions about them as well.
I know absolutely it doesn't follow the book at all. Other than certain events from the book happen in the movie, but in the wrong order. But I want to know from someone who hasn't read the books, does it follow a logical sense in a movie form? Because I remember being really upset.
I will take notes and I'll report back to you.
So, other than the one that we both watched, the only movie that I saw since the last time was Gundam 00 movie. I've watched a lot of I've seen almost every Gundam. Everything that's been translated into English I've watched. That's dubbed. Like, my friends don't like watching subtitles. And I get that for like a 60 episode anime, not wanting to watch subtitles, especially since we watch 4 to 6 hours at a time. That could get tiring. So I've seen all the Gundam stuff. This was the first time I've seen this. We rewatched the entire 00 series before watching it because it's a sequel movie to the 2-season anime. And I absolutely can't recommend it unless you've seen the whole thing. Even though it starts off with a, where it goes over
previously on, or like the...
Yeah, but it's not like Dragon Ball Z where it's like, last time. This one's like, it literally, one of the characters is in a movie theater watching a movie recreation of what he just went through, and he's like, that's not what it was like at all. And it's like, if you've seen it, it's hilarious. Because it's like, that's not what any of those characters are like. Everyone's super flamboyant. They change one character to be a girl, and I think they, like, I want to say, because it's like, they're kind of multicultural. There's like an Irish guy and a Middle Eastern guy who's a little too white-skinned, and then another white guy, and then another white guy. And they change it to be like one black guy, one girl, and I think they add like a cat into one of the cockpits with them. It's just like, it's great because it parodies so many things, and it's so fun. But yeah, like, that doesn't really let you know what's happened. I mean, you can totally follow it, but it's really for the people that like the thing. And I enjoyed it, though, like the last Gundam thing I watched that was new to me. It wasn't there like the other previous things. It's the first ever Gundam series to have aliens in it, though, which was entirely new territory, but kind of the premise of the entire TV show. You find out at the end, it's like, yeah, we were just preparing humanity for aliens. Show's over. And aliens don't show up, and then they bring the aliens in the movie. So, yeah, I guess that's, I want to say it's spoilers, but it really isn't. It happens like 30 minutes in. So, yeah, that's the only one I really watched.
What score would you give it out of 5?
2. Like, I hate to be that low on Gundam, because I love Gundam so much, but the aliens were weird. They, like, here's the thing. It's a space action, like, high-action space opera with a little bit of drama and stuff. And the aliens are, like, a weird form of alien that, like, has to connect mentally with you. They don't really have a physical form. It was like, why don't we just make these aliens in spaceships so that they, like, fight and then realize that they have differences and, like, do that rather than making it some sort of weird nebulous thing that was awkward. And it's like, this may work in its own sci-fi movie, but not in this universe for me.
Fair enough.
That was my biggest issue with it, and why low rating.
Okay, Dan, what's another film you saw that you'd want to talk about?
Well, the other one I talked about, I saw that besides Insurgent was the one that you assigned me last week, the animated film, The Book of Life.
All right.
And for those that don't know, it's about... Well, it's kind of hard to explain what it's about, but it's about... it centers on these 3 kids, 2 boys and a young lady that grew up with one another, and 2 lords of the underworld place a bet over which boy is going to actually marry the girl, and it's kind of... And the idea is, like, if one gets it, then the other person's going to be in charge of the good underworld, the place where people are remembered, and if the other one gets it, they'll be the land of the forgotten. And I'm doing a horrible job explaining it, but I think it's based upon a classic Mexican story, Mexican fable, and it's produced by Guillermo del Toro, and it stars Channing Tatum, Zooey Deschanel, and a few others. Ron Perlman shows up because del Toro's attached, so he's required to. Right. But I gotta say, I ended up liking the film. The first thing that kind of caught my eye is with a lot of animated films, there's often like the same type of... They look a lot alike.
Aesthetically, they're very similar.
Yeah, the aesthetics very often. Sometimes you'll get something like Lego Movie, or How to Train Your Dragon, but like there's not huge differences. But the thing that caught my eye with this is it is very different. The the main story, the characters are being represented through like wooden dolls, so they all have that kind of look to them. They're almost stop motion in a way, especially when it gets into the the land of the dead. Basically, it gets really crazy. And the thing I absolutely love, there is a bullfighting centerpiece, and especially the main one near the end. I love the look of the bulls. It's really kind of abstract in a way, but I don't know. I love that. I thought their design was really creative and really cool, and I just overall the art design was what I really appreciated. Some of the casting, I didn't really. Most of it made sense. The only one, like Channing Tatum, played one of the major characters, and I thought his performance was fine. It just seemed out of place. Like it just seemed like a miscasting, considering this is a movie like so steeped in culture that you would have someone being played by Channing Tatum. That just seemed kind of odd to me.
The other one that kind of threw me off was Ice Cube.
Yes, and Ice Cube as well. And then having a reference to Friday, which, I guess you have to. That's a requirement. And there's also use of pop music, which I didn't get the purpose of that either. I don't know if it was needed, especially when the first time it does it does the song Creep, and it comes out of nowhere for me, and I don't know if it was needed. It seems like you have this movie that's celebrating history, this story that's very about this culture and this land. To bring in like American pop music, I don't know, like it didn't flow. It took me out at times. If the performances themselves were fine, but I tended to enjoy the other original songs that were created for it. I mean, they're not hugely there, but they're there. But I just thought it was a lot of fun. When I saw the trailer, it felt like this. I was really turned off by the trailer. The story just seemed really frenetic and out of place, but within itself, it actually ended up working really well. A lot of creative characters, and it's definitely one that I think has an all audience feel, and I think it would work for that. And it's a good. I ended up really liking it. I gave it about a 3.5 out of 5, and I don't know if it'll make how high it'll be. I don't think it'll make my top 10, but glad I saw it, and I think it just makes it even more evident that last year was such a great year for animated movies, because that's another good one to add to the list for me.
Yeah, and that's a film that I had no interest in originally.
Yeah.
Kind of like you, I saw the trailer. Even with Del Toro's name attached, I was somewhat turned off by it all. And it was something that we just randomly ended up getting Redbox. I don't know if that was one of the times where they were out of Big Hero 6, so we're just like, okay, we'll just get Book of Life. And we ended up watching it, and I kind of had a very similar reaction to you. I was glad I watched it. I was entertained the whole time. It was something I went in with no expectations, and it definitely surpassed that. So it was a pleasant surprise. I agree with you that some of the casting is a little bit weird, and the music as well, especially for something like you said that's kind of steeped in so much culture and history. But the main thing that I appreciated outside of the story being unique was that, like you said, the animation and the design and the the artistic value of it was something that wasn't just your cookie cutter DreamWorks film or something like that. It was something that was different and unique and enjoyable the whole time. So I'm kind of like right on the same page with you with that one.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I'm glad I saw it for sure.
All right, so far I haven't given you anything that was torturous so far, so I'll have to try to keep that string going. But we can talk about. I'll get into one of my unique, and then Matt and I can talk about one of your homework assignments from earlier. So before that, I did see Big Hero 6. I'm not going to talk about it though, just to be safe. And I don't know if it'll end up on my list in a couple months or not that we do, but I want to save my thoughts on that until we get into that discussion. I did see Green Lantern, which I had never seen before.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd never seen Green Lantern. We actually got Green Hornet and Green Lantern the same day. Not that those are similar films, but they both have the word green in them. And we got them from the used DVD store. But I'd never seen Green Lantern, and I actually had heard all kinds of bad things about that film. And again, went in with no expectations. But I thought that was a decently enjoyable superhero film. Not that I haven't been spoiled by maybe better stuff in the last few years, but I got enough enjoyment out of that film where I don't necessarily think it's the worst superhero film I've ever seen.
I think it was the comic book people that really panned it because they tried to cram in 3 really major storylines from the comic books into one short movie, which was a terrible idea. Like, it's a terrible idea both as a movie standpoint as well as a comic standpoint to kind of ruin all these storylines immediately and to not give any of them enough time, let alone all of them.
So did you guys both dislike it as well?
Didn't see it.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Actually, funny story. I saw that on my wedding day. I got married on a Saturday. We got married, and it was later in the day, so we had time to kill. So we went to see that, and yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of it. I liked everything that was not on Earth. I liked all the space stuff, like the training sequences, but everything on Earth, I was not a fan of. So
I guess this is the way I view it. If I'm viewing that, and I don't remember what year it came out.
2011. I have to remember.
Okay. Obviously, yes, thank you. Okay, it does not feel like a superhero film from 2011. If you see, because I had seen this and I had no idea when it came out, so I guess I wasn't in the right mind frame. I almost viewed it as something that came out like, if you viewed it as like a superhero film from the 90s or early 2000s, then it doesn't seem so bad.
Yeah, if you compare it to like Spawn.
If you're comparing it to that type of stuff, like it's like, oh, that's a decent, superhero film. If you're comparing it to the Marvel stuff and the Dark Knight and those types of things, it definitely doesn't hold up to those. But I guess just if you're just looking for something light and somewhat fun, and you've seen all the other superhero films, maybe you could watch it and get some enjoyment out of it. I can kind of see what you're saying, Matt, even not knowing all the comic book storylines, that it does seem like they're cramming in a lot into what they're doing. And they're also setting up something that never happens because we never get another movie. So that's always a mistake I guess you make sometimes. But I don't know. Like, I guess I didn't think it was as bad as I had heard, but I definitely wouldn't. I'm talking about it now because it's still not going to make my list coming up in a little while, which we'll get to later. But let's get into the one, Matt, that we had to watch for homework from Dan, because I know you said you saw it, and we weren't able to talk about it last week due to you being out. So let's start with you, Matt. What was your opinion of Secret of Kells?
Well, you could have talked about it without me.
I didn't want to leave you out.
So my first thought within the first, 2 minutes, I pulled out my phone and I was like, were the people attached to Samurai Jack doing this? Because it had like a very similar style to me, at least. I love Gendy's stuff. I try to watch it, and this did not have him or anyone else from that, so that was upsetting. But I guess not. I don't know. I guess as a quick overview, like, it's a movie where like I feel like little happens in that movie. I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to talk about. Like, it's like very slow, and it feels like nothing happens that I really latch onto. But at the same time, from the beginning to the end, there's like 20, 30 years.
Yeah, I kind of get what you're saying there, too, from a pacing standpoint and maybe from a energy level standpoint. I don't need my films to be like hopped up on 5-hour energy drinks or anything where I have to feel like I'm being entertained and spun around and everything like that. I'm not trying to say that at all, but I think too there is I could see a lot of people having an issue with not just the pacing, but I don't know how else to say it besides energy level, where maybe I needed to rewatch this when I was more energetic myself, because I was kind of watching it late at night, and it kind of put like a little spell on me. I didn't fall asleep, but I was just like, it put me in like a zone where I was not ready to do anything active for sure, because it kind of not lulled me to sleep, but for lack of a better term. And I can kind of see what you're saying, where you might say that it didn't, even though it's covering a long span as far as time goes in that story, I can somewhat see what you're saying and agree to the point where even though it's covering a long time, there doesn't seem to be like a lot of stuff happening in between. But it's one that's hard for me to kind of come to terms with as far as how I felt about it, or like where I would rate it, or what kind of level of enjoyment I got out of it, or even to kind of break it down and say what's good and bad about it, because I don't know, maybe I didn't latch on to as much as I was hoping to. And it obviously is a different, like we were just talking about with Book of Life, it's definitely a very different aesthetic feel to it. And I can see a lot of people being turned off by that. Unlike you, Matt, I'm not a big fan of
Kenny Tarkovsky.
what's his name? Yeah, I don't really like his style. But I try not to judge any film based on the style as much as I can, whether it be black and white or with subtitles or, I know some people will write off stuff because it's stop motion or, that type of thing. And I try not to do that. But I can see some people, that are used to the traditional, 3D animation or animation over the years that they might find this as something hard to take. I don't know. Dan, I'm interested if you're willing to share any of your thoughts on this one, what your reaction to this film was.
I mean, I can guess if you're comparing it to the pace of the Lego movie, yeah, it's definitely a lot slower, I would say. But I don't know, when you say there's not a lot happens, I guess most complaints I saw was kind of the opposite, where you have a lot of plot almost combined into an 89-minute film. But I don't know, to me it felt like an old Fable. And I love the art style.
I agree with that.
And I love the art style. It felt biblical in that way, where it was very much a kid, that classic story of a kid doing what he's not supposed to. And I don't know, I liked how it was the main conflict of it, or the main, the relationships you have with him and his uncle and his other uncle who is trying to get him to write. And I don't know, I felt it was very simple. And maybe I tend to be rather more patient than the modern audience when it comes to things. I know a lot of things I like, people will say it's really slow, and I don't know, I didn't think it was slow. It didn't really bother me in that end. And I just, for me, anytime I never got bored, mostly because I think the animation always won me over. I was just interested in the world that it was creating. And yeah, I mean, I guess if you're looking at is a storyline big? Is it have that epic feel you would think from a fantasy? You would say no. It's really isolated. It's really, the story's rather small, but I don't know. I liked it in that manner.
I kind of appreciate the things that you're saying about it, though. I appreciated the fact that it felt different to me, and I appreciated I think you nailed it on the head. It had almost a fable / biblical kind of feel to it, and I liked that about it. It didn't bore me ever. I wasn't necessarily bored with the story. I guess I was just hoping, and like I said, I don't need something to be fast paced like the Lego movie or like that. I guess I was hoping for just maybe a tiny bit. I don't know. Maybe, like I said, maybe I'll have to rewatch it at an earlier time in the day.
It doesn't. I would say it doesn't necessarily do great job of establishing stakes per se, establishing what exactly there's a lot of mystery behind what's going on, and it's almost you're just don't go there because bad things are gonna happen. And it relies a little too heavily on its allegorical references, and that's where you can kind of lose you, because it's not, it could be it does feel like a cartoon made for it. It's out of time. It's something that's almost out of place in that way, where it doesn't feel really designed for modern audiences. Where it's just, it feels like it's being told the same way it was told when it actually happened, I guess. And maybe because of that, some of the things can get lost in translation because it's referencing things we may not be aware of, or cultural or elements that we're not familiar with. So some of that it may be out of context for us. So maybe that's where we're not really seeing having that relationship with it that maybe a movie wants us to.
That makes sense.
Dan,
what? Go ahead, Matt.
I feel like if it were a trilogy, or not, 3 movies, not a trilogy. I feel like I wanted more filled out. I wanted to know more about the forest spirit character. We get 2 or 3 scenes and nothing really explains anything about her, and then a little bit more about the boogeyman or whatever he was. I feel like if they fleshed out those characters a little bit more, maybe in a second movie, maybe in making this movie 20 minutes longer, I don't know, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more. But I think, when you're talking about, you don't know that they're the stakes, other than the very propaganda feel of the Vikings. Vikings are always bad. Watch out for them. Like, I wanted more from all of those little stories, I guess, to make it feel like one big, complete story that I could understand.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I was saying, where I felt like it. If my one complaint would be like it touches a little bit on a lot, like it kind of steps its toes and little different elements here and there, where you can get that, where maybe not everything's completely fleshed out, but I guess the overarching relationships with like the kid and his family and the message it was going with kind of hit with me. And like I said, I think the biggest thing I really liked about it was just the animation and style. I know if that's like Samurai Jack, I love that style too. That's kind of why this appealed to me. Like I can like stick with an animated film if it's not great, if I really like the animation. So, and that was kind of the case with it. I don't think it's a bad movie. I do like it. I don't think it'll make my top 10 of the decade so far, but I think any of those issues that I would normally have on like a live action film, I can easily forgive when I'm kind of digging the animation.
Is it just because I'm an old man that I don't like that animation style as much?
Maybe.
I feel like it's because of what I grew up with. I don't know.
Like, what are you, like 5 years older
generation.
than me?
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, you grow up with different things in your childhood, and I don't know if that kind of helps shape what you like and what you don't like. I don't know.
See, like, it reminds me a lot of, like, I don't know, even like the Madeline type of style, where it's like not everything, some of the motions aren't really finite, or I don't know. To me, it reminds me of a lot of childhood stuff. So that's why I tend to enjoy it.
Right. What kind of overall score would you give this one, Dan?
I think I gave it similar to Book of Life. It's like a 3. I liked it more than the Book of Life, but I gave it pretty much the bad thing about scores, you're limited. But I gave it like a 3.5 out of 5.
Okay, Matt, what about you?
Like, I don't want to give it a very good rating because of the things I said, but like those seem, half of them at least are personal. Where it's like, I wasn't super excited about it, but I could see, like, all of Dan's points are also relevant. I think I'm going to give it a 3. 3 out of 5.
Okay. And this one, to me, it's just a hard one to judge. It's I don't necessarily think there was, like, really bad things about it. So I don't want to score it, like, a bad score, but it wasn't something that I was... that I think was like, you know, the greatest thing I've ever seen or anything like that, so I don't want to give it like a great score. So I'm probably somewhere real close to the middle. I guess I'd probably fall in the 2.5 range, maybe. A real high 2.5, if that makes sense. So that's kind of where I'm at with that one. Were there any other films that we missed out of either one of you guys before I get into the other one that I had for homework today?
Actually, I watched Thor 2 again. I forgot to mention. It's still Thor 2.
Dan, what about you? Anything else for you?
No, the only other stuff I had was like for our list, so I'm holding on talking about it for now.
Okay. The other piece of homework I got from Dan for this week, since Secret of Kells was actually last week's homework, was Startup, starring Jack O'Connell from 2014, which was, Dan, your number one film of the year, correct?
Yeah, it was at the time. I don't know if it would be now, but it's still going to be up there. Like I said, though, I feel like it's a movie there's movies that just hit me in the right spot, and that was one. So.
And I can definitely see why. This film is all kinds of intense, and I will say that I think I've heard this on when a couple other people reviewed it, and I will agree with them that it's probably a film that you should turn subtitles on immediately at the beginning,
yeah,
if you have that option. For a couple different reasons. Number one, because of the accent, and number two, just because the dialogue that's being used is obviously not something that a lot of Americans would be used to. And, you know, different words are used more freely than what we're used to, and other words are used in place of words that we would use instead. So I think it's something that subtitles are necessary for, and it doesn't take away from anything. I know a lot of people hate watching movies with subtitles. I don't think it takes away anything from the film. But obviously, for those of you that don't know, and I'm very late to the party since this is a big film for last year, but startup is the term for when a minor in this culture is being basically transitioned into an adult prison. So instead, our version of instead of being like in juvenile detention where you're actually in, an adult prison system. And Jack O'Connell, of course, plays the young kid that's in this system. And it just kind of goes kind of through his life adjusting to that system and kind of the different interactions he has with with the other inmates and with the staff there, etc. And I don't want to give too much away just in case there's people that haven't seen it, because I know it did somewhat fly under the radar for some, and especially those that aren't doing movie podcasts or listening to movie podcasts, you might not be familiar with it. And it's available on Amazon Prime for free, and I definitely think it's worth a watch. I really like I know this is kind of a cheap word to use to describe, but I like the realness of this. We kind of talked about that a little bit when we talked about August Osage County last week. I just like the real human element of this film, and it doesn't pull any punches. Dan, you'd agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. It feels like you could be watching it. It doesn't feel glorified, or it's not like Hollywoodized in any way, like the prison, its depiction of prison life. It feels like it is true to form. And the guy who wrote it, he has background as someone who worked in the prison system, and I feel like that comes true. There is one character that I feel is a little bit cartoonish and out of place, the one warden that I had an issue with, but overall, though, like the relationships, especially like the counseling scenes, which were some of my favorite of last year, it felt like it was coming from a place of honesty and a place of where someone who was been in those situations and knows what they're really like, because it was interesting in how intense they were, and like how just the one wrong word could really just set everyone off, and just it was like, I think you said intense, like that it has that nearly throughout the entire movie. And I love Ben Mendelsohn in it too. Like the dude is like 5 foot. He makes Tom Cruise look tall, but in that, like, he just carries around with him this like sense of almightiness that he'll do whatever he wants and he can get away with it, and you buy it completely. At least I did. I thought him and Jack O'Connell, like they were really what made the movie for me.
Well, and I think outside of maybe, like you said, some of the actual prison staff, like the warden, for example, and maybe a couple other of the actual staff, outside of that, the acting in this film from top to bottom is absolutely ridiculous. Like, they are right on. Not just Jack O'Connell and Ben Mendelsohn, but the other inmates are phenomenal. Especially those that were in that counseling session with Jack O'Connell. I thought they were fantastic. And I agree, those are some of the best parts of the movie. If you're someone that shies away from movies that touch too closely upon real issues and real human life and kind of the not so pretty nature of some things, then this is definitely not a film for you. But I'm someone that usually is attracted to those types of films because I like seeing a level of realness in certain films, and I definitely got that from this film. I don't think I would say that it's my favorite film of 2014, but I have a sneaky suspicion if I redid my list now, with everything I've seen that technically I saw after the end of the year, that this would probably have a real good shot of sneaking in at least my top 10.
Oh, awesome.
I'd probably sit somewhere in the 4 to 4.5 out of 5, probably real close to 4.5 out of 5 on this one. I really enjoyed it. I thought there's some funny scenes in this, and some humor that you don't expect. And I don't mean like funny like you would see in any type of comedy movie, but just some of the lines that you hear and some of the things that happen are just like so insane.
Yeah.
Funny is absolutely the wrong word for me to use in that sense.
Well, there's a moment with a cell phone where it's just done so nonchalantly. It's just you don't even, if you don't even pay attention, you might not realize what exactly is happening in that scene, and then you're like, oh, that's where that came from. So
right, and there's definitely a lot of moments that some people may turn away from the TV and not want to see. So that's something to be aware of when you're watching it. But yeah, like I said, I definitely like this one. I would probably give it a 4.5 out of 5. So
awesome.
So definitely appreciate that recommendation and finally forcing me to watch that film, which I had for no apparent reason was putting off, like subconsciously, I guess. And the last movie that we'll talk about before we get into next week's assignment and our main attraction of Insurgent, just because I did see 2 films in the theater this week, and I want to give some opinions on this one since everybody else was avoiding it, and that would be Sean Penn's The Gunman. We saw that Monday night, and this is my first thought and my first overall kind of synopsis of that film would be that it was 2/3 of a fantastic film. And then 1/3 of a ridiculously absolutely terrible film. So I was watching that film, and through 2/3 of it, the first 2/3, I was completely sold. I was completely connected to Sean Penn's character and some of the other characters, and I was buying into everything that was going on. And I was almost getting like a classic feel, classic from our generation, I guess. Almost like, I'm trying to think of something else I can compare it to, and I can't really think of an appropriate film. And it has nothing to do with like the plot and it's no similarities to a film like Heat or to a film like some of those types of, action films from that period, that Boondock Saints or anything like that. Like, I don't think it's a similar film to those, but I almost got a similar feel to it for the first 2/3, and I was all about what was going on. And then the last third of the film completely ruined everything that happened prior to that. It gets almost comical, the things that they decide to do and the contrivances that they take to wrap this film up, that it just ruins the entire film. And I thought it was super unfortunate. I'm looking forward to hearing what other people say on it, because I think other people may have problems with the whole film, but I really actually bought into the first 2/3. And it's basically telling the story of Sean Penn, who was involved with some undergoings at the beginning of the movie in the life that, I don't know how old he was at that point, but in the first instances that we see from his character, where he's in, a foreign country, and he's posing as a person that's doing, humanitarian work and that type of thing, and he's a part of an assassination plot of, a person of that culture who was high up. I don't remember exactly what his title was. Something of leader of the mining. I don't remember what the title was, but he's involved in an assassination plot on this individual. And then it kind of fast forwards 6 or 8 years, I forget the number, I think it's like 8 years, into the future, where he now on his own is doing his own humanitarian work legit. He's not posing as anybody. He's not got any type of secret special ops, CIA / whatever, Interpol, nothing like that. He's just legitimately doing some of his own humanitarian work. And basically there's an attempt on his life directly connected to the moment that we had seen 8 years prior. So the story kind of sets up as Sean Penn then trying to figure out who knows about that event, who's possibly out to try to kill him, and what is the situation about that. So he's reaching out to his former comrades and people that the only people he knows that knew about that assassination attempt, and basically trying to find out who's after him before it's too late. I know a lot of people, and myself included, kind of thought this was like Sean Penn's version of Taken. It's nothing. It has nothing to do with that. It's far from that. I don't think there's really any correlation to Taken or any of those other movies that have been similar to that. And I just found it interesting through that first kind of section of the film to try to see how he was going to trace back and who that we had previously been exposed to was good and who maybe wasn't good, who was alive still, who wasn't alive, and that type of thing, and the kind of the connections he makes. There is a romantic angle involved because he was seeing somebody and kind of developing a relationship with somebody in the first occurrence, the 8-year prior occurrence that he had to abruptly end because of what happened, and he had to basically leave the continent, so he never got to kind of tie that ends up. And it just kind of goes through the rest of the story, and the big problem is with the climax when he finally gets kind of face-to-face with the person that is trying to hunt him down, and everything that happens from that point out is kind of a joke, unfortunately. The movie is portrayed and advertised as starring Idris Elba. That is false. Idris Elba is not really in this movie, nor
is that you just trying to say that so he doesn't get points taken away.
I feel wronged that I'm going to lose points because Idris Elba's name is attached to this film as a star, and I'm legitimately saying that there was no need for him in this film. He is on screen for less than 10 minutes. He has probably less. If you take one scene out, he has less than 10 lines. And it could have been played by anybody, absolutely anybody. So that is false advertising, and I am pissed off about that. But it also has Javier Bardem in it, and his scenes are probably the best scenes of the entire movie. So if you do watch this film at all, watch it for Javier Bardem's performance, and watch it for the first 2/3, and then as soon as it gets going, shut it off and just make up your own ending. So I would probably give this one a 2 out of 5. So 2 out of 5 for The Gunman, but if it was just the first 2/3 of the movie, I'd probably be at like a 3.5 to 4 out of 5. So,
Wow.
All right. Dan, any homework for us this week?
Yeah, I was going to actually split it up this week. And for you, Kevin, I was thinking of talking about movies in 2014 that a lot of people are talking about, and be curious to hear your thoughts. I think it's still streaming on Netflix, and that is Blue Ruin.
Okay.
It's, crime film, was getting a lot of praise last year. Came out around this time last year. And
yeah, I definitely wanted to see that, so I like that.
And Matt, I think actually I talked to you about this movie previously. I think you might like it. I don't know. I could be completely wrong. But that's the movie Grabbers, which is on Netflix currently.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a sci-fi comedy, kind of in the vein of Shaun of the Dead, or just it's kind of wacky and yeah, I don't know. I like it all. I thought it was a fun movie. Hopefully, I'm not wrong. I could be. I tend to be. So.
We'll see.
Nonsense. All right, Dan, for you, thinking about a couple different things. I'm thinking about some of the lists that we're doing later on, and hopefully trying to find something that you could watch that maybe not will make your list, but something that would at least be in the discussion. I gave you an animated film last week, so I won't do that this week. We were talking about comedies a little bit ago and trying to decide what qualified as comedy, since it seems to be one of the weaker genres in recent years. Have you? And I know you have seen some of the other films by these individuals, but have you seen the film Date Night?
No, I have not.
Okay. Let's go with Steve Carell in Date Night, and I'd like to get your opinion on that.
Okay.
So, all right, so that leads us into our main attraction of this week, and that would be the Divergent series, Insurgent, because, yes, unlike other podcasts, we are not afraid to both watch it and review it. I'm just kidding, guys, from In Session, etc. But, Dan, I'll let you start first. What are your initial thoughts on both? I shouldn't back up a second. I did also watch Divergent this week in anticipation for Insurgent, but going into this film, Dan, what was your thoughts on the Divergent series in general?
My feelings were that I didn't really have strong feelings either way, to be honest with you. I saw the movie last year. I'm seeing it in theaters like way after it came out, and it was, I don't know, it was fine. Like I didn't hate it. It just kind of, to me, it was just kind of existed. It was nothing really stood out to me. I like Shailene Woodley. There was things I liked about it. There were other things I felt were just, they were just, the word that always kind of sticks in my head is like vanilla. Like they're head and shoulders above like Twilight, but the thing about Twilight though is that it's just so bad that it's memorable, just how awful it is. But with Insurgent, it's just the word kind of mediocre, I would say. I don't know. I just didn't really appeal to me a great deal. So I wasn't super excited for the Insurgent series, the Insurgent reboot. Like a main reason I went to go see it, my wife's a fan of the book. She actually likes in the movies too. So I don't know. And I guess I like this one more than the last one. Did you want me to talk about the second one too, or just the first one? I wasn't.
Well, we can get into that in 1 second. I'm kind of in somewhat of the same boat as you. Like, I wasn't necessarily like wowed by anything in the first one. I enjoyed it as far as like an entertaining movie that I could just kind of escape in and see what the world is that they're creating. Something that I always enjoy out of like a first film of any type of franchise building type of venture is discovering the world, whether I enjoy it or not, but just to kind of discovering what they're setting up, what the scenario is, who the characters are, what the backstory and the backdrop of the world are. So, I mean, I got that. I enjoyed that part of the first one. I agree that they're much better than the Twilight films. I guess my biggest thing, and we'll get into this when we get into the talk about the actual Insurgent film, was I do understand on a certain level why people like the Hunger Games so much. But me personally, I just don't see that vast of a difference between all of these different types of films. Like, whether it be Hunger Games, the Divergent series or any of the. I mean, I know some of the other YA films based on books or whatever have been terrible, but outside of those terrible ones, like, I don't see the big, vast difference between them all. They're basically a very similar story. Like, you know, just take specifically Hunger Games and Divergent. Like, they're a very similar story. They're a similar, you know, discussion on the class system and you know, different forms of government type thing, and then on also, you know, alternate storylines on, you know, from an individual standpoint and kind of the strengths and weaknesses of the individual people and kind of their journey, which is a totally different story. But I don't necessarily get, like, I'm not convinced that if Divergent had come out first that we wouldn't be flip-flopped on singing the praises of Divergent and pooping on the Hunger Games. I guess I know I'm in the minority.
I guess for me, when it comes, I'm not a huge lover of the Hunger Games films. Like, I didn't really like the last one all that much. The first one was okay, and I did like the second one with Catching Fire. I forget the name of it, but for me, I think the thing I like about the Hunger Games more, there are two major things. One, I find that it has more interesting characters. Like, there aren't any really characters I find all that appealing in Divergent. They all seem to, there's no one that stands out, but even like the side characters. But in Hunger Games, I find like there are characters I enjoy. Like, I like Woody Harrelson's character, mostly just because it's just Woody Harrelson. Stanley Tucci's a little fun. Elizabeth Banks, her character's kind of wacky. To me, there's more colorful characters that kind of go along with it that keep me at least interested. Where like the Divergent series doesn't necessarily have that. Like, there's no one that really stands out to me that's all that interesting. And
I 100% agree with you on that standpoint. From a standpoint of like the adult characters and from a standpoint of the side characters. Like, all the people you mentioned are phenomenally colorful characters, and I think you're right that it does add a nice level to the Hunger Games that the Divergent series is sorely missing, because the Divergent series gives us no, whether it be in the form of the adult characters or supporting characters. You know, if you take out the main, whatever, 3, 4, 5 kids that are involved, like, outside of that, there's nobody that they even give us that's interesting or to look at, maybe outside of Kate Winslet's character. So I get what you're saying with that. My problem more so is with the actual main focus of each film being the kids. Like, if you're judging it on like the peripheral and the side characters, I agree. Hunger Games has way more to offer.
Yeah.
But my problem is the relationships between the actual main characters in the Hunger Games. I just don't buy. I hate the performances by Josh Hutcherson in almost every single film so far.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I guess the relationships I feel work, or at least with, I find Katniss is a more interesting character than Shailene Woodley's character. I think both are good. I think they're both great actresses, but for me, Katniss has, like, her emotional core to me makes more sense, because it's just like she's just trying to really help her family, and I think it. For the first film, at least, that, like, it's a relatable, it's simple, it even with all this, like, you know, like random, like, why they would even put kids in this island to kill each other, like all these issues that I find with it, I feel at least like she has an emotional center. Like, even the relationship she gets with that Rue character, I felt there's at least something there. I never get that with like anything in the Divergent series. Like, even the family dynamic, I feel is it doesn't really hit me as nearly as much with that one. And I agree, yeah, Peeta and Jennifer Lawrence's, like, Katniss, their relationship is like that was my hugest issue with the last movie, was that I never cared about that relationship, and when that became like the factor that movie was centered on, I just, like, I didn't, like, it never mattered to me. So why should it matter now? The thing I liked about it in the first movie and somewhat in the second was like what they did with it, like how it was almost, they played on the fact that they had no chemistry. It was like almost like it was like a political gain or like a strategy they were using. So it almost felt like that was purposeful, but so much so that when you got to that third movie, and now we're supposed to actually buy the fact that they actually care about one another, and that Katniss and Peeta are supposed to be this tight-knit group or whatever, it never really had any impact. But I guess I just found what they did with it in the other movies a little bit more interesting, where you have the relationship in Divergent and I don't get that. I just feel like it's just a simple love story, and it's you know, a young adult novel meant for teenage girls. So I find it, but you know, as a 30-year-old guy, it's not all that appealing.
Right, and to me, it's kind of like what I was saying. You put all these films, none of them are 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5 for me, and none of them are 1 or 2. Like they're all like 2.5 to 3.5. Like they're all in the same boat. I can't get excited about any of them, and I don't hate any of them.
Yeah, I would agree. Like it's big reason I go see them is because it's at least something I can get a little bit of enjoyment out of, and so can my wife. So it's like it's a good compromise movie for me.
Okay, so then getting into when you saw Insurgent, you said that you had thought that it was better than the first one. So what made you like Insurgent, even if it was mildly better? What made you think it was better than Divergent?
I guess because there was less focus on the world a little bit, because I find the world of Divergent, just the logic of it bothers me the more I think about it, and especially even at the end of the second movie, I'm like, I don't get the point of all this. That's like my biggest question. I just felt it was faster paced, and the first film felt like an introduction. It felt like an origin story, a lot of training montages. I like that this movie actually, it didn't do that. It felt like you kind of got more into the world a little bit. I still wasn't a huge fan of it, mostly because, I guess, like I said, like, the world doesn't make sense to me, and within that, I don't understand the motivations to nearly anyone and what they do, why they do it, besides Shailene Woodley's character. Like, Miles Teller, his character, it feels like it's just a glorified plot contrivance where he just does what the story needs him to do at that moment, and even with, like, her brother, there's the same way. I don't know. Like, I feel like things just happen, and I mean, you can say that maybe The Hunger Games is guilty as that as well, but for me, at least I felt more was happening in this movie, but I didn't understand nearly why anything was happening the way it was. I don't know. I felt like, and now I know how people feel when they watch comic book movies, and they're like, I don't get who any of these people are. That's kind of how I felt often in this film.
I can see that too, and I do agree that it seemed like there was more to latch onto in this film. I thought it was an improvement on the first one as well. I was curious for you, because one of the big themes throughout this film, and maybe to its fault, maybe more of a theme than it should have been, but one of the big themes is reality versus what's going on in your mind, or what's going on in these simulations, like this virtual reality world. And what was your take on, because I think there's part of it that's good. There's part of an entertaining aspect of, as an audience and as a viewer, trying to figure out what's real and what's not, and trying to kind of go along that journey with the character, and kind of putting yourself somewhat in the character's viewpoint. But then I also think that there's a danger when you use it as much as this film does. Were you turned off by how often we have to kind of balance between the line of reality and virtual reality, or did you think they did that well?
I don't know. I never necessarily bothered me per se. I don't know if I'd say they handled it well. It wasn't something that happened a great deal. I guess, like, the ending. And there's never a moment in which I was ever unclear of when we are in reality and when we are in the simulation, even though they try to play with that. It's kind of, to me, it felt obvious when it happened. I don't know. It feels like a conceit in that way, where it's like its biggest, like, these great like all this action, or all this like great. It's just. It makes me ask a lot of questions regarding, like, they're trying to unlock this glorified time capsule, and because she's going through the simulation, but it's based upon her own self. But then it makes me ask questions like, how would they even design this based up, like, it's just like for this person, like, why would they, like, what if she was just a normal human being and didn't have these issues?
Right.
Yeah. So it seems like a cheap way to get to some of the conflicts without having to have any of the ramifications of what happens when you address those conflicts. So that to me seems, it just, it comes out as nothing but an excuse to get these kind of crazy, like Matrix style type of action sequences. And I don't know necessarily if you need that. Like I don't know. They were, they're pretty to look at. Some special effects were done decently, but I don't know. To me, it just felt unnecessary.
The one effect that wasn't done well, I thought, was the number of times that we got a 360 shot.
Yeah.
Good God, that was starting to annoy me by the end of the movie. And I'm not trying to sing the praises of this film. I think there's a lot of holes in here. And even some nitpicks that you could throw out there. I mean, there's one point where I was going to rename Miles Teller Miles Teleporter because he's in one room with Shailene Woodley.
Oh, yeah.
And then he immediately is in another room, and I don't know when that was supposed to happen.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed that too. I'm like, did he walk through the glass? Is that what happened?
I think the biggest thing for me, and why I kind of was on Twitter, why I was bringing up the Hunger Game references, was because even though I like a lot of the side characters, I like the adult characters, and I probably like the world that Hunger Games is taking place in better, I just don't buy the relationship, like you said, between Josh Hutcherson and Katniss. I don't buy the relationship between Liam Hemsworth and Jennifer Lawrence. And I just never could buy those relationships between the main characters. I do buy Katniss's relationship with a lot of the other people that she's in the actual Hunger Games with throughout the series, but I couldn't buy her relationship with her and some of those main characters. Whereas, and I don't know if it's just a factor that they somehow tried to find every actor that Shailene Woodley's starred with in a film. But I could buy, even though Miles Teller character, like you said, I do think that character has a lot of issues. But one of the issues to me was not the believability between her scenes with him. I bought the relationship between Miles Teller and Shailene Woodley. I bought the relationship between Ansel Elgort and Shailene Woodley, and I bought the relationship between Theo James and Shailene Woodley. As far as something that was being acted in a believable fashion and being portrayed and presented to me in a believable fashion, outside of, like you said, a couple contrivances with Miles Teller's character and maybe one with her brother, towards the second half, that I definitely had an issue with. But that's just something, and maybe I'm just not a Josh Hutcherson fan, but I don't think it's limited to him in the Hunger Games. But
yeah, I think the issue with the Hunger Games is that they're trying to play both sides, where it's like it's only for the games, but maybe it isn't. But I don't know. I do like the conflict between Miles Teller and Shailene Woodley. There is some amusement there, though. The one line he throws out in the beginning of the film just to me seems I don't know. Again, it's one of those he's just there to push things forward at times. Theo James, the actor, to me, he just feels like just one of those guys, like a Sam Worthington or even Jai Courtney, who's in this too, or just one of those place filler guys who just he has that look, and he to me has no personality. I can't even think of a trait that I would use to describe him. So I don't know, their relationship to me was on the same level as the relationship between Katniss and whatever the Hemsworth in the other film. You get more of it, but I still don't get the reasoning behind it or feel there's anything really there. They're telling me there is, but I don't feel like that chemistry is nearly as much as strong as a film needs it to be. So to me, there are those all the I agree with you that the brother relationship makes more sense, and Miles Teller and her have at least, if anything, they probably have the most interesting relationship in the entire movie. But besides that, again, the connection between the characters is not there for me.
Do you think there was, lastly, before we move on here and give our scores and whatnot, the way they ended this film, were they trying to safeguard for the possibility of not doing a third film?
No, it is how the book ends. I asked my wife who's read the books, and she says they're pretty similar to the way it ends the same way. So no,
but it does almost end like it could be the end of the story.
Yeah, and my issue, I didn't really touch on this, but my issue with even a lot of these stories is how sometimes mystery gets in the way of motivation, and I don't understand the reasoning behind nearly anything that's going on, because I feel like everything is being waited to be told to us. Like the whole, like a lot of this is focused on this box that's being opened up, but we have no idea what that box can do. Like the range of it can be anything from just like, you know, an old Facebook message to like the world ending. So I don't even know why Caitlin Wentland's character even wants to open it up if she's just curious, because it seems like.
Right, that is a problem, because she seems to think like this is going to be like some type of powerful force that she can use for her benefit.
Yeah.
And she has no idea what it's going to be.
Yeah, and it seems like she has everything she needs because she's in control. She's gotten away with what she's gotten away with, but by seeking this power, she's just putting herself in more jeopardy. And the
only thing it can do is change the status quo.
Exactly, which she was a fan of. And I guess my other issue with the movie is that it's like I don't want to get spoilers, but again, like I had to wait till the third movie, because when we find out what we find out, I'm like, then what's the point of any of that? What is, like, if this is what you're going for, it seems like it. I don't know. I'm just confused. I guess it just seems like it. The logic behind everything seems it's a long way to go to get to where they got to if what the message plays out the way it does. So I feel like that's really cryptic, but I don't want to spoil anything. So I think the third film will be or third or fourth. I don't know if they're splitting it up into two. God, I hope they don't, because they need to stop doing that. But that's my biggest issue, is that they're waiting to like reveal why things are happening the way they are, but by waiting so much and having so much that you don't know, nearly everything just seems to be pointless.
Yeah. Overall, what would you give a grade for it? The Divergent series Insurgent.
That name's never gonna not be funny. I gave it a 2 out of 5.
Okay. I'm probably just a notch above you here. I'd probably go with a 2.5. But like I said, I think that's where all the films are. Like, the best of these two series might get me up to like a 3.5.
Yeah, for me, the best one so far is the
second Hunger Games.
Second Hunger Games, the first one, and then probably the first Hunger Games, and then probably this one. So,
yeah, and I'm with you. I didn't like the third Hunger Games at all. So, all right, so that's where we're at on that. Before we move on too far, let's get a quick look at what you guys could be looking forward to in this next week of movies, starting with some Blu-ray releases that are coming out on Tuesday. If you're looking for something to buy, the biggest releases coming out to Blu-ray on this coming Tuesday, March 31st, would be The Imitation Game, which obviously had a lot of Oscar buzz and awards that were handed to it. Wild, starring Reese Witherspoon. The Interstellar Combo Pack. I missed this one in theaters last year. Island of Lemurs, Madagascar Combo Pack. And Hayden Christensen and Nicolas Cage. Matt, I know you're excited for this one, coming out on Blu-ray on Tuesday. Outcast.
That was quick.
So, anything there worth buying, Dan?
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
Fair enough. And then for those of you wanting to decide what you should go to the theater this weekend to see, like I said, the biggest releases would be Home, the animated film, and Get Hard, starring Will Ferrell and Kevin Hart. Also, even though it's been on demand, maybe released in some places, Serena, which I would avoid like the plague. While We're Young, starring Ben Stiller. And some other smaller.
That I am looking forward to. It's Noah Baumbach, who's done a few things, Squid in the Well and Francis Ha. So I am looking forward to that. So.
And something that we didn't do at the beginning because I forgot, and I'm a terrible person, that I said that we would be doing, just to give you a quick look at the Rotten Tomatoes scores of those films that are just being released. But before that, not much changed after more reviews came in. Insurgent is at a 31%. The Gunman is at a 12%. Do You Believe is at a 14%. The big difference there was that The Gunman actually had a fan response of only 35%, which matches it with Unfinished Business and The Lazarus Effect as 3 of the worst fan-rated movies of the year so far.
Nice.
So not much to see in the form of that. If you're looking at the movies that are coming this week to try to decide what to watch, not much getting better as far as Rotten Tomatoes go. Get Hard is currently at 29%. Home is at a 40%. Serena is at a 22%. I think you're right there, Dan. While We're Young is at 82%. So,
but that's really limited right now. I think it's like New York and L.A. So,
right. So if you live in one of those cities, go see that. Otherwise, I guess you can take your chances if you're a big-time Will Ferrell, Kevin Hart fan, or just a fan of animated films, but they don't look like they're getting that great of scores. Our question last week, we did our first look at a actor spotlight when we covered Will Ferrell, and our question last week was, who else would you like us to cover? And we did get a couple responses. One person named a whole bunch of people, so that would be hard to get to all of them. But we did have a few responses from the website as to people that they thought we should do a spotlight on. One of them being Tom Cruise,
which I'm liking that because he does have a very varied career. So that's I like that selection. So.
And that kind of fits the mold of what we're going for. Someone that has a big enough filmography that you can kind of find good and bad from. I'll just go through the names of some of the other ones, even though there are a lot of them. But Jake Gyllenhaal, Tom Hardy, I think those might be a little bit harder to do. Gary Oldman, Eddie Murphy, Bill Murray, Ryan Gosling, Ryan Reynolds, Leonardo DiCaprio, Jonah Hill, Emma Stone, Tilda Swinton, Meryl Streep, Julia Roberts, Sandra Bullock, and then someone added Harrison Ford to the list. So a lot of names there. So we'll take that into consideration when we go to do our next actor spotlight.
The issue with doing Bill Murray is that they're all good, so it'd be hard to get.
Yeah. There wouldn't be much on the bad end of that. As for a question for people, this week, Matt, we haven't given you much of a chance to talk, so I know that you've been sitting in the background and coming up with a great question for the folks this week, right?
I was looking at cat gifs.
Because of the cat happenings in the background. We left you out in the dark too long, and you've been relegated to your own inner pleasures there with the cat gifts.
Yeah.
I do have a question if we don't have one.
Yeah.
We talked about Jennifer Lawrence and the fact that she might be doing a Marvel movie, and a new Marvel movie from the new Marvel, from actual Marvel Studios, and if there's a character that you would like to see Jennifer Lawrence actually play, because I cannot think of one.
So we know it's not. Well, I mean, we obviously threw out the ones that you guys said that you might not be able to see her in. So what are the other alternatives that she could play if she was to jump ship and go over to the Marvel, which I guess is how you describe
Marvel Square.
So, great question for next week. And next week, we will be going back to something that I think a few of you enjoyed that we started last month, which was our top look at the decade so far. And we're going to do another one of our top 10 lists from the last 5 years, and we'll be covering the comic book movies with next week's episode. So we did science fiction and fantasy last month. We're going to be covering comic book films this next week, so that's something to look forward to. Dan, do you have anything else to say before we close out the show?
I will be on an upcoming episode of In Session Film, which should be released on Monday, so look forward to that.
Excellent. Matt, what about you? Anything that you'd like to say about the week before we close it out?
Nate and I, who some of you out there may remember, are working on a new project, but that's all I can tease for now.
All right. So I have to wait and see what that might entail. So thanks as always for joining us here on Weekend at the Movies. Obviously, you can contact us and get in touch with us in a bunch of different ways. Best thing would be to go to geekcastradio.com, find the episode post, and get involved in the conversation that we have there. We respond to everybody that posts there for the most part. You can also visit the Facebook page by searching Geekcast Radio Network. The Twitter for the network is at Geekcast Radio. Mine is at Optimus Solo. Dan, what's your Twitter?
I am at Movie Revolt.
And Matt, what's your Twitter?
I am at Fridley Scent.
Okay, so that does it for this week, and we will see you next weekend for another episode of Weekend at the Movies. That's right. Today it is... Oh, good Lord. No, it's not today. Don't read the same thing you just read. All right. And I would like to talk about the rumors about Star...
Sorry, I was pulling up the new story and that came up.
That's all right. I will say that it's a film... Jesus.
Everyone okay?
Yeah, I think my cat just tried to commit suicide. All right. She's stuck behind these two dressers, and she just jumped to try to get out, and it didn't work. But
And then you left her.
I will continue. All right. But this movie was all kinds of intense. You know, if you're someone that, Jesus, she's up now, so it's good. I'm gonna take a quick second and let that damn cat out up here. Hold on.